Speaking of Man City, though, they had their cherries popped at the weekend. Very British expression for losing your virginity. They lost their unbeaten streak, but they were thoroughly outclassed for 90 minutes. And they have been in a number of games recently and got away with it, I suppose, by winning. What was your thoughts on City's performance at the weekend? And could more of the same now happen, that they've got a pretty tough run of games coming up?
Yeah, I mean, like once they lost Rodri and Kevin De Bruyne's injured, like I kind of figured that they wouldn't look as good as they usually do, but I still think it's unacceptable if you're Man City to be losing to a Bournemouth, right? You still have like all that talent. You still have Haaland out there. You got Phil Foden, who won Player of the Year last season. He's kind of fallen off a cliff. Like you have the players in your squad that you should be able to overcome Rodri and KDB not being there. But I just don't think, to be honest, I just don't think that Pep has found a way to get the best out of Foden this season, and to also get Haaland a bit more effective. I've been saying it for a long time. I think Erling Haaland's a very overrated footballer. I think what he's good at, he's like the best in terms of he's great at finishing. He's great off the ball in the box, but in terms of what he offers you overall, it's not really anything that benefits you. And I think, Pep just has to find a way to maybe change up the system. But when you have Haaland up front, you can't really switch that many things around because you have to force him the ball, or else he's just not going to be a part of the game script in any kind of way. He doesn't track back. He can't help him build up. He doesn't do anything. So I feel like the system just isn't working with the current crop of players that he has out there. But yeah, I think City, I still have them as favorites. In my opinion, I still think that they're going to win the Prem. I know that you guys were just praising Liverpool. I'm not that high on them as of right now. I think we're kind of massively overrating what they're doing. So I still would say that Man City are the favorites because I know that they are an ambitious club. I think in January they might spend a little bit of money to maybe right some things that are going wrong. And I also think that maybe with the uncertainty of Pep's future, that could also maybe be playing into these players' heads. But yeah, I think City are just not as good as we thought they would be this season. And yeah, you are feeling the effects of no Rodri and no KDB. So it is what it is. Phil Foden has to step it up, though.
Can we, because I know, listen, it's just started off, and I feel like Phil Foden, in a way, he's just not stepping up to the rank. And this is the thing that I like to say is I don't think that Phil Foden, if put in a situation like the Copa, and we were speaking about this yesterday on Ahwa, and I genuinely think if you put him in a position like a Saka or like a Cole Palmer, and the team is at the bottom and they depend on your goals, they depend on you to stand up and take them through the games week in, week out. I don't think he's able to do that. The thing is, I understand to a certain degree last season he did it when Kevin De Bruyne was out, of course. But when Kevin De Bruyne came in, he gave him a lot of a very comfortable situation where he was able to play a bit deeper and offer him the balls at times and to help him out with putting him in the position to score. But since Kevin De Bruyne has come out of that team, I genuinely think he has nobody around him. And that's the time where you'd look for a star player like Foden, who, and to be honest, in my personal opinion, it's an embarrassment to the league to give him the player of the season, and now he's dropping these kind of performances, because this is the thing. You'd expect a player of his skill set, you'd expect, hold on. You'd expect a player of his skill set to come out and to carry his team. When you're struggling against Bournemouth, you'd expect him to start either creating goals or scoring goals. The thing is, when we're struggling against a Southampton team, look what he does. Assist, goal. Done.
What
He helps us get over the line.
What about when he's struggling against a Newcastle?
No, but okay. There's certain games where we're asked to defend, and we're asked to defend too much. We're going to get into that, of course. But the thing is, when Saka is given the freedom, which I feel like Foden is being given on that pitch, bro, he didn't do nothing with it.
Wait, but it's actually not good enough. Between him winning last year's Player of the Season versus how is that an embarrassment? It's two completely separate things. Yes, he has fallen off this season, but how could it be an embarrassment?
This is a thought process that I've had for a while, because I don't think that he deserved it. I thought that Rodri deserved it. In my personal opinion, I think Rodri was a much more important player to that Manchester City team, and Foden was not necessarily carried in a way, but I think Foden was helpful, of course. But I think if you took, let's say for instance, you took Foden out of that team, and then you let them play the season, and you took Rodri out of that team and let them stay with Foden. I think if you take Rodri out of that team, it would have been much more drastic, much more
So
problematic.
can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
but
My
stop. But like, I
personal
feel like
opinion.
that's
Go
kind
on.
of easy to say though, because all the attacking talent that Man City have, I think it definitely is easier to replace a Foden than a Rodri. So like with no Rodri there, now you're asking what like Gundo to play that role or maybe Kovacic. Like if you take out Foden, you still have like Grealish, Doku, you got Savio, KDB if he's fit. So I kind of think that's like a given that Foden is kind of easier in that team to replace than a Rodri though.
The fact Man City have adequate depth in his position doesn't discredit Foden's quality. I think that also the City's problem at the minute isn't to do with Foden or Haaland. It's to do with the fact that their midfield can't handle it physically against other midfields at the minute because they've lost Rodri and they're playing Gundogan, who looks off the boil physically. Bernardo Silva, for some reason, isn't looking as good physically. Kovacic has never necessarily been this physical midfielder, let alone a physical DM. So there's games and there's situations where physical midfields are roughing them up and just powering through them and putting that Man City defence, which I don't actually think has been worse than it has been in previous years, but they're just facing more chances a game. They're facing more opportunities. They're probably playing,
Yeah.
I don't know the numbers, but if the numbers are there, they're probably performing just as well individually, but because they're facing more chances, they're conceding more clear-cut chances and they're conceding more goals.
Do you know what I think with this, right? Foden's not having a good season for one reason or another. I thought it started strangely with him not starting enough games, but Pep goes through this. I remember a season or two ago, City fans remember the exact seasons where John Stones looked immense. And then the new season begins and he's kind of on the bench. And this has happened so regularly. If you look at Pep's time at Man City, where I remember Gundogan maybe 4 seasons ago was out of this world. The following season, he was kind of on the bench a lot and being rotated in and out. He just goes through these periods. It's a handful of players, KDB, Haaland as an example, who kind of start whenever they're fit and available. But there's been a number of players that have been rotated in and out for prolonged periods of time. So it isn't strange to see this happen. But I think what a lot of people are doing with Foden is they're seeing him have the first bad patch of his career and they are jumping on it. Excuse the expression. And my dog hears me, he might get upset. But they're jumping on it like a bitch in heat. It's as simple as that. And I'm going to use this as my moment to shit on Foden, who keeps getting praise, who gets praised more than my favorite player, who is seen by certain quarters of football fans as better than my favorite guy. This is my opportunity to say all the bad things I've said for 6 years about him. Now's a chance to go, I told you I was right. I saw this in a more extreme example with a 38-year-old Ronaldo at Man United when people said, told you weren't that good, Terry, 10 years ago. Do you remember when I said that? It just feels to me opportunistic and the right time to beat a player over the head. No one's going to deny that he isn't in good. No one's going to state that he is in good form when he's not, and he has to step up. And it's also coincided with, I think, a few things are going wrong at Man City. Rodri being out is one of them. There are other injuries. They've also just completed a 4P. Maintaining a winning mentality to the level you need in the EPL going into a 5th season is ridiculous. 4 on a bounce has never been done in English football. 5 on the bounce is beyond unprecedented. I just feel there's almost an element here of a little bit of overanalyzing. City have gone from being motherfucking aliens to being somewhat human. And suddenly it's, Foden's, all those awards, Foden got me nothing anymore because he's having a bad period. He's going to turn it around. And there is no empirical evidence or proof that if he was to go and play for Arsenal or play for Man United or play for a team not as good as City, that he wouldn't be a very good player. And we spoke about this last week on the Top 6 show. If you go through a lot of players that are considered GOATs in the Premier League, they play for one club. But when they play for that one club, that team was brilliant. Are we going to say that Drogba can't be considered as brilliant as he was for Chelsea because Chelsea were a great team when he was here? Are we going to say that Henry, because what he did in the Premier League, Arsenal were amazing that whole time? Does it diminish his achievements because he did it in a really good Arsenal team? Does Paul Scholes lose his prowess because for 20 years he performed in the best team in England? For me, I think it's overanalyzing to the nth degree, and it holds very little water in my opinion. Foden's doing poorly. He should be criticised for how poor he's doing. But people are absolutely they're clutching at straws to try and shit on his legacy, and I think it's off key.
I think people as well are trying to jump on the fact that he didn't have great Euros and trying to push both things together and then go, right, that's it. Last season was a flash in the pan type thing. I mean, I had a look earlier. He started 2 games this season. So it's not like he's been starting every game and it's just been a case of he's not got into it. It's been 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
And the thing is, he deserves criticism, and he deserves criticism. And
because
I get it.
He can make a case for himself to keep starting. That's the thing that it is, because Foden's now this season got the opportunity, particularly now with how City's going, to become the star of the show in a depleted City side that look really tired, that look like they're losing their legs. And as Terry said, I think that's a really good point you make, that it's so hard to keep going. Not that I know right now, but to keep having that sort of expectation there that you need to be as good as you've been in the last 3 seasons. But I don't think Foden's helping himself, because again, he's got the opportunity, as he's still young. He's not that young anymore in a world of absolutely immense 16, 17, 18 year olds. He's not that young anymore, so that can't really weigh down. So there's also a bigger expectation. And when you win the award you do last season, there is still that expectation of you to step that up, show something better, be better. How high is your ceiling? And I think that the small game time he is getting, I don't think he's quite doing enough to warrant for him to get more starts, which is mental, because City do have a lot of injuries now, and it almost shouldn't be a case of, can Foden fit in this team? Can he start in this team? Everyone expected Foden to be starting in this team, and the fact that I agree, Tom makes a great point. I think the Euros really did crush Foden's self-esteem massively. I know, that it shouldn't really be an excuse, and players like that should be able to keep calm, carry on, but that's not quite the case. And I think the fact that Foden went through what he did at the Euros and came into the season not starting, missing a few games, and almost kind of missed the train of hopping on and getting into his rhythm and his stride from the get-go, has really affected him. But again, I think he has not quite done enough in the small game time he's had to fight for his case, because he right now has got the opportunity to be City's star player from the get-go, but he's not quite been able to do that. I do like Foden, and I won't discredit how good he was last season.
Me and Tom are thinking the same thing, I think.
I don't think we are. I'm saying that even if Foden was on, even if the level he was doing last year, they're not better off.
I think Tom.
Is he lagging for me? Is he lagging for me?
All right, cool. I was making sure that wasn't my internet. I was like, damn, I cut out in the middle of the show.
Bro.
I mean, look, I think what we're kind of realizing, and I think Foden is a very good player. I think he has all the qualities to be considered one of the best. But I think what we're realizing is he's not, or again, it's still early on, right? Because he can still turn it around and go crazy the rest of the season. But I think what we're realizing with Foden is that maybe he's not the guy in terms of he can never be, let's say, like the best player at Man City. Yes, he could be a very good player in that system. But maybe what we're seeing is that the expectations that people may have had in terms of, well, this is Kevin De Bruyne's last season possibly at Man City, right? And I know that a lot of people, they have Foden as being the guy that takes over that mantle. Maybe he's just not the guy to be able to do that. But he can still be a very good player in a very good system.
I don't think so now I think
no, but the thing is as well, look, and that could all be true, but I think it's the premature nature of the claims. If Foden doesn't turn it around this season, if next season he's poor, Pep leaves, I don't know, Alonso goes in, has another bad season, then is sold, goes to, where would he go to? Arsenal, right? They pick up a City player, goes to Arsenal, average for 2 years, ends up at Bournemouth, average again. Then I think you could look at his career and say, do you know what? That first 3 or 4 years that he delivered, he was being carried by the Pep system and the stars around him, and he was sort of just he was a side dish in that. But only then can you make that statement, when you've got so I would say the really good case and points for that. He's having a bad start to this season, as we've seen a number, by the way, of the players that came through the England squad in the summer. Declan Rice started very slowly and poorly based on his previous 3 or 4 seasons, as an example. I think the summer hurt a number of England players, rightly or wrongly, and it's impacted them. I just think too many overarching and disrespectful claims are being made about Foden. And where I implore football fans to hold their horses is that the logic they're creating about Foden could also be applied against some of their players, past and present. And I'm just someone that likes to do my best to control the narrative about those things, about my own club, you know. And it's this idea that you can't be considered that good because you're doing it for brilliant teams. I mean, what does that mean for Messi's legacy?
The best teams.
But exactly, what does it mean for the managers who are at these teams? It's when you start to stretch that logic out, you start to diminish the achievements of most great. I mean, you end up going down the line. Well, saying is Totti the greatest ever striker ever because he did it brilliantly at an underrated team for all of his career. Does that make him better than, I don't know, Maradona? And Maradona's a great example. He went to Napoli and did things. But actually, you could argue going to a team with huge pressure like a Real Madrid makes it harder for you because 2 or 3 bad games and their fans are putting bricks through your car window. I mean, it's just crazy to say that because you're in a good team and you're performing well, your performances should be undermined.
Well, yeah,
I just think that's a
Terry,
weird
I don't
notion.
think that there's anything wrong with those questions coming up because, again, a lot of people were viewing Foden as the future of Man City in terms of he will be the best player. Now is his time to prove why he should be getting.
I think even if Foden,
hang on, but